The Chief Creative Officer Johan and the CEO Shams have been over in South Korea at the G-Star Gaming Conference, and they've been absolutely grilled by South Korean gaming media. So there are some massive teasers here. There are 3 major updates coming to the game very soon, and we've got a lot there's so much to cover in this video. I suggest go and get a drink, sit down, and get ready for the long haul. I'm going to put links in the video description below, so you can jump to the different sections in the video based on whatever you want to listen to. But I do recommend just listening to the whole thing, because this is going to be really cool, really good insight behind the game, future content, what's going on with the game, how we got to where we are today. It's really, really cool. And one thing I will say is Korean journalists are absolutely savage. Now, I've had the pleasure of witnessing them in real time. This was back in, I think, 2018 or 2019. I went over to South Korea for an Overwatch event where they released a new map. I think it was Busan. And they had a Diva cinematic, obviously the Korean character in that game. And yeah, the Korean media absolutely ripped apart the game devs. Like they weren't interested in the new announcements. They just wanted to know why the game was bad. It was amazing. So they don't care. They're savage. But anyway, we're going to break all of this down, and I'm expecting some absolutely savage questions. All right, let's do this. The 60-day update was a really surprising process. I was surprised when they announced that they would fix the game for 60 days, and I was surprised when I saw the details in the patch notes. As a result, it is a very enjoyable game now, but it must have been a big risk for the CCO and the CEO. Can you tell me how this decision-making process was done? And Shams responds with, in early August, we did the Extended Freedom update. Up until this point, we thought we had made quite a few changes because we were in a hurry to solve the problems that had popped up rather than adding something new. But even this was not well received. No, to be honest, it was a hopeless response. So we put our heads together and thought about it. What is fun? What kind of fun can we provide? As we discussed this, we realised that even we couldn't properly define what kind of fun Helldivers 2 could provide. And the bigger problem was that we weren't looking at the answer sheet, that is, the opinions of the community. Since we didn't answer their conversations, gamers talked among themselves, and in the process, their dissatisfaction grew. We reviewed all these comments and complaints and prioritised the tasks that we had to solve first. Adding new weapons, mechanics and stratagems were necessary, but they were pushed back. To be honest, we admit that, but what's the point of adding something new when the game is broken? The most important thing was to get the game back to normal, so we calculated the time required for this work and announced that we would devote 60 days to fixing it and asked for Sony's cooperation. The process was not easy, but we somehow got it done. And then Johan comes in to address this question. After that, we discussed in depth with the designers about the fantasy, philosophy and balance of each weapon. Instead of balancing in the form of a zero-sum game where everything is reduced to a low average, we focused on what the weapons really needed to do. For example, the assault rifle we discussed. How many shots does it take from a regular assault rifle to kill a Terminator? Terminator! I think they mean Terminid. Remember, there will be some mistakes in this, guys, because it is obviously translated from Korean. So, yeah. Take some of the stuff with a pinch of salt, but what is being said is basically the gist of it. After discussing the issue among the team members, we said if it's a 5.56mm caliber rifle, 4 to 5 rounds would be realistic, but in reality the game required 8 rounds. It was far from the ideal number we had in mind. After that, we gradually changed all the weapons so they could actually meet the expectations that gamers would have. The process was a repetition of changes and modifications, and more changes and more modifications. We repeated this every day until we felt the game was more fun than it was released. When it was released. And in the process, we also noticed that some weapons were being used too much. For example, flamethrowers and machine gun support weapons were hardly used. Okay. This was largely a problem in terms of game design, since anti-tank firepower was greatly required as the difficulty level increased. Gamers who wanted the game to be above a certain difficulty level could not get the equipment they wanted. So we set the principle that if you have the right weapon for the situation, you should be able to solve it easily without having to aim or handle it accurately, and proceeded with the update. Among anti-tank equipment, only certain anti-tank equipment is not used a lot, and if it is included only in the anti-tank category, it can be easily resolved. Okay, so that's kind of like a breakdown of the whole idea of the 60-day plan. Now, we kind of, I guess, knew a lot of what they were talking about there. Like I said, some of it is kind of in broken English because it's been retranslated back into English with Google Translate, which isn't the best. But yeah, we get the gist of it, right? They wanted to make the weapons feel a bit more realistic in the sense of how many shots would it take to kill a certain enemy with a certain weapon. and kind of like sort of tried to home in on that. I think, though, to be honest, they just needed to make the weapons more powerful, and I think that's what they did. Now, if this is the way they got to that, then that's fine. But I don't think anyone could be in any disagreement with me if I was to say, following on from the 60-day balance patch update, where the weapons were given a ton of power, the game was made a lot more fun. Now the game sits a much higher average concurrent player user number on Steam every single day. So by extension of that, it does on PlayStation. And of course, you can also just go into the game and see the numbers live, and you can see, yeah, you will see 80,000 plus Helldivers quite often, especially when there's new updates, things like the DSS comes online and stuff like that. So yeah, they definitely nailed it, and I'm glad they did. And yeah, it was an interesting tidbit as to how they kind of got to that state. But these days, I'm playing the game with satisfaction because I can play any weapon. In that sense, can you explain the current balance philosophy of Arrowhead? And Johan says, one of our development philosophies that we've had for a long time is a game for everyone is not a game for anyone. When we were going through a period of stagnation, we forgot this philosophy and tried to balance mechanically, but now we have similar thoughts in terms of balance. For example, there are many types of players in Helldivers too. In the case of Shams, he is close to the so-called dad diver, who plays the game a little more lightly, and in my case, I'm closer to the core gamer. The same goes for developers. When looking at the balance of a weapon, each gamer and developer can have different perspectives. Here we had to decide who should focus on this for balance, and the current standard is to set at the extent to which all weapons can be used happily in any situation. To put it more simply, we are trying to make all weapons feel somewhat OP. For example, the Armor series and the Call of Duty series are both popular shooters with a large number of gamers, but the direction of fun for those two games aim for is completely different. If Armor is attractive with its realism close to a simulator, Call of Duty pursues catharsis based on speed and flashy instincts. What we lost during our difficult times is the definition of what our fun is. The fun of Helldivers 2 is the fierce battles and overcoming a process that occurs during the processes of our four gamers defeating enemies, pouring in and accomplishing missions, and the numerous incidents and accidents that occur during the process. In order to implement this, even if it is not an invincible weapon that works in all situations, each weapon must have its own role and charm. So at this point, we're aiming for a level where you can play the game even if you choose a random loadout. So you'll have to be careful about your loadout at difficulty level 10, but at difficulty level 7 to 8, you'll be able to clear the game even if you choose a random loadout. So again, I think the main takeaway here is the idea of that they lost the sort of balanced direction of the game. They lost what the game was meant to be. I think what happened was they were going way too down the path of it being a bit too realistic. At the end of the day, this is a co-op horde shooter with outrageous weaponry against outrageous enemies. It needs to feel ridiculous with loads of stuff going off, massive explosions, powerful weapons. Yeah, there still needs to be an element to the game where, you know, you need certain tools for a certain job, or they make it easier, and I think they have nailed that right now. So it is cool to see this, and I do like that line about, yeah, every weapon should kind of feel a little bit OP, and it really should, to be honest. And I do think they've nailed that with most of the weapons. There's still a lot of weapons that are never really going to get used because they're just kind of boring or they don't feel great. But this gives them more opportunity to upgrade them in the future, I guess. So, yeah. Right, let's move on to see what Shams thinks about balance. I personally really like SMGs, but at this point, there's no SMG that can be used against heavy armor. Even the most recently added SMGs aren't really single-handed. To solve this, we'll need to add more game mechanics or content. But as you know, up until now, we've been more focused on solving the problems that existed before rather than adding something new to the game. Thinking about it, it would be pretty cool to be able to use an SMG with both hands. We could do it. I've seen similar proposals before, and I thought it was pretty cool. However, it would take a lot of work, starting with animation modifications, so it wouldn't be possible in the short term. But if we're given enough time, it's definitely possible. I'm seeing a lot of other great ideas. Yeah, so I mean, the SMGs, the heavy SMG that was added to the game in the recent Warbond, it's trash. It's got way too much recoil, and it isn't really what we expected it to be. So it only has medium armor penetration for a start, and it's two-handed. It's not one-handed. I think all SMGs should just be one-handed. It doesn't really make sense to have an SMG that is suddenly two-handed, because it will catch you off guard, especially if you're using the other SMGs. Now, I think if the current heavy SMG was one-handed and you could use it in conjunction like with the shield and stuff like that, yeah, it'd be really cool with a ballistic shield. It'd be a stronger option. to take, and also if you're carrying mission objectives as well, gives you that bit more firepower than using your secondary. But I still think it doesn't really have a place in the game, that weapon. And it does kind of fall into that category of, they've released another weapon, which kind of isn't great. And actually, if you go back and you look at the chemical weapons war bond, the chemical spraying weapon, I forget the name of the thing. This is how much we care about it. It confuses enemies and it crowd controls them. It is really OP, but it's boring as hell to use. But if you use this on like defense missions and stuff like that, it's really good. It is really, really good. Or the eradication missions, really, really good. Problem is, though, it's just boring to use for the Helldiver. It doesn't really look great, doesn't feel great to use, and you're relying on your team to kind of follow up with the damage, so it doesn't feel the best. So, again, it's another weapon which is added to the game, which just on paper sounds great, but then it's never really used again. I think this could be an issue going further into the future, because if we start getting more of the war bonds that just have kind of pointless stuff in them, less people will pick up the war bonds, and that's going to impact their revenue. Are the developers satisfied with the current balance and gameplay? So Johan says, compared to before, we are definitely satisfied and happy. One of our team's coders, a guy named Linus, we call him Minus, always brings a lot of mine stratagems to every game. It may seem like a ridiculous loadout, but I think this is the fun of Helldivers too. And Sham says, that's right, to be honest, it doesn't mean much, but it's the charm of this game that you can just throw 4 orbital napalm stratagems in one place and stare blankly. We are happy to see each gamer create a concept, create their own unique loadout, and sometimes bring ridiculous equipment. Watching each player voluntarily create a more fun play is a happy scene that we wouldn't have dared to hope for in the past. Speaking of balancing, when we were doing the 60-day update that strengthened the overall firepower, the designers worried that will there be too many people flocking to the 10th difficulty level after the update? The desirable difficulty distribution is a normal distribution that bulges in the middle, but they were worried that the results would be skewed to one side. In the end, it was close to a desk theory. Difficulties level 6 and 7 still account for a huge majority, and of course, there are many levels, level 10s, but the most played difficulty is level 7. Like I said, the translation is a bit over the place with this sometimes, but you can kind of see what they're saying there. So interesting that the main difficulty levels, or where most people are playing, is 6 and 7, and the most played difficulty level is difficulty 7, which I think makes sense. You know, you're getting access to super samples, and you know, it's, I guess, where the game gets a bit more strategic. I always play on difficulty 10, and I think one of the issues I've got is it's just becoming way too easy. Like, when you play on it for that long, it's too easy, because the other players you get in your team are generally as good as you. They're probably better than me, let's be honest. And loadouts do generally kind of fill in the holes. Like, somebody will always take the recoilless rifle. If it isn't me, it'll be somebody else, right? So you've always got that ability to kill a Bile Titan instantly, or take out a Hulk, you know, or rapidly kill a tank, or take out a factory walker super quick. But even then, like, even if you don't have those weapons, there still are ways of dealing with them, which obviously wasn't the case before. So it is a good change. It's a positive change. But yeah, I think that's pretty cool, right? And I would like to see more difficulty added to the game, though. Like, give us some insane difficulty, because Super Helldive, it's not that hard. In fact, I'd say actually probably difficulty 7, 8, and 9 is harder, because you don't get the, I don't know, the pro gamers that you get at level 10 that can bail you out. Now let's talk about the future, not the past. From a gamer's perspective, there are many gamers who have already completed all the upgrades and equipment unlocks and are hoarding resources. Can you tell us about the new progression system? Johan says this is a topic we're thinking about the most right now. And Shams comes in and says, we already knew that there are a lot of gamers who have completed all the progress in April or May. We added one more difficulty level and one more ship module. But as I said before, we were more focused on fixing the problems at that point than on something new. At this point, we are focusing on creating content that gamers can immerse themselves in. As of today, which was November the 14th, the Democratic Space Station has been activated, and gamers with a lot of resources can invest their resources. More features will be activated next week. Starting today, gamers can vote to choose what they want and where they will and what they'll receive by voting. We will continue to add more player participatory content like this in the future. In addition to this, we're also planning crossovers, collaborations with other IPs. We don't want to do too many crossovers, but we are considering appropriate collaborations that fit the game's atmosphere. For example, collaborating with Power Rangers would be difficult in terms of concept, but maybe we could do something like Black Ranger. All right, so we'll get onto the collaboration bit in a second, because there's more info on that coming up. But yeah, I mean, so they are adding new features. The DSS, though, has got all of the hallmarks of the old Arrowhead over. Like, You know, this is, yeah, it's a great idea on paper, but 50% of it is basically useless. And as of recording this video, I don't think the blockade mechanic works against the bugs, which is a bit weird. And also, the station is now over in bug space, so it will never be back to the bot front because, well, the bug divers will just keep voting it over there, so it's all over. And by the way, because you can see the percentage of how many votes have gone into a certain location, it just means people vote for the, you know, the more popular winner. And I'm sure pretty much every voting system in the world doesn't show you who's got the votes as the votes are being made, right? But then again, maybe that's the super Earth way because it is super democracy. So, yeah, or should I say managed democracy? Oh dear. Yeah, but this is cool, right? So the DSS, it's going to get updated at some point. I mean, they've got to fix it. We do know that the Eagle Storm is really cool. I really like that. I think the feedback to that's been great. That does feel good, like you're in a movie, a war film, very cinematic. The planetary bombardment, not so much. So, on the topic of collaborations, what exactly are you talking about when you say crossovers with other IPs? Johan says, nothing's been decided yet, but we're also considering IPs like Warhammer. Shams Aliens seems like a pretty good theme. What do you think? What would be good? And the reporter says, I like StarCraft or Starship Troopers would be the best fit. Sham says, bringing the Zergin from StarCraft would be good, and bringing the Terran Marine weapons would be good too. Something like a Gauss rifle. Now, I think this is interesting, right? So, obviously, Starship Troopers crossover would be like... the game is Starship Troopers, but it would be really cool to just see Starship Troopers stuff in the game. That would be pretty funny. And yeah, I think like StarCraft coming from the South Korean reporter is a no-brainer. I mean, the game is literally an institution in South Korea. It would be cool to see that though, but you know, would Microsoft be open to that? Who knows? Aliens would be super cool because you could just take the weapons. Like, give me the pulse rifle. That would be sick. Or even the smart gun, although I don't want an auto-aim weapon. No, I'll take that. I'll take that back. I'll take that back. The flamer, I guess we've already got the flamer in the game anyway. Yeah, there's a ton of inspiration, obviously, in the game with a load of stuff anyway from loads of different IPs. But I think it's interesting that Johan says Warhammer. I mean, yeah, Warhammer would be pretty cool if you could dress up as Marines, but then would it just become like, I don't know, Space Marine? I don't know. Yeah, it would be really cool. I think as well, though, you've got to be aware of when you go down the path of, it sounds harsh to say this, but diluting your IP just for branded crossovers, it does kind of take away from what your IP is. You guys know I make a lot of Overwatch content and I do play Overwatch, but Overwatch heavily suffers from this now. I mean, it went through a phase where it was very resistant to collaborative crossovers or the content, to now it just basically depends on it to make money, which isn't a great place to be in. And obviously there's only so many of these things you can do as well. So yeah, always be aware. So what about ship cosmetics, right? Destroyer skins and stuff like that. So this is what the reporter says. I think something like a destroyer model is possible. Shams says, it would be nice to change the destroyer skin or the pelican skin to a dropship. Again, this is with a bit of the crossover information. We're talking about a dropship from StarCraft and whatnot. Whatever it is, the important thing is that it fits the game called Helldivers. It has to be an IP that players are familiar with, but it shouldn't interfere with the fantasy of Helldivers. So I think it's important to choose the right IP. The armor and weapons of StarCraft are really cool, but we have to think about whether they'll fit in a Blizzard game or Helldivers. Johan says, yeah, I think we need to be very careful and cautious when applying any skin or cosmetic. For example, even if I like a certain skin, I don't want to ruin the game experience of my teammates. I think the whole process has to be done carefully. And Shams goes on to say, we've discussed the cosmetic system in the past, where only what the gamer sees changes. For example, in the case of Dota 2, when applying a map skin, the user's map will appear to have changed, but others will see it as the default map. However, this was rejected because it could cause confusion during the game. The terrain or object that one person is talking about may appear different to another person. In any case, even if there is a crossover, it seems that most of it will be applied to armor and weapons, as long as it does not interfere with the gamer's gaming experience. And then Shams says, it is possible to change gunfiring sounds at the local level, or it may be possible. So I suppose that's interesting, right? You could have maybe unique sound packs coming into the game that are only local just for the user. Things like map overhauls, probably not going to happen. I think things like ship skins will definitely happen at some point, and different types of ships. You know, I can see them moving us from super destroyers to a different type of ship, maybe a bigger ship, maybe it's something you could unlock through a new progression system. You know, there'll be stuff like that I'm sure will come in the future. And yeah, I mean, obviously the main takeaway is any collaborative stuff will just be skins, basically, for your Helldiver. and potentially weapon skins as well. Can you tell us about the Illuminate? Or the Illuminates, as the translation says. Johan says they were banished from the galaxy 100 years ago. They'll never come back. And Shams says, yeah, those guys will probably be forgotten. Fortunately, they were completely banished, so they probably won't come back. But if they do, it would probably be a big problem. Officially, Super Earth does not recognize the existence of undemocratic aliens, which is true. So yeah, look, no information on the Illuminate, but the Illuminate is coming at some point. It looks, I guess, like it's going to be next year now. I don't know. But they could be going in for a massive Christmas time update, and we get the Illuminate turning up, and we've got the DSS now, and I don't know, like, it could progress fast. Obviously, the thing with all of this, and I always like saying the elephant in the room, but it really is. We've all seen the leaks at this point. I mean, if you haven't, you can just Google Illuminate leaks, and you will see them. Like, I mean, there's so many of them out there already. There's tons of models. There's people loading the models into the game. The same goes for things like vehicles, unused stratagems, weapons. It's everywhere, right? There's tons of stuff in the game that hasn't actually been finished and delivered to us yet in a proper update, but we already know it's there. And the Illuminate is coming to the game. We know that's true. And yeah, a lot of their enemies seem to be getting fairly close to completion based off the stuff I've seen. Obviously, I can't show you in this video, but like I said, if you want to go and have a look, just, well, Google will help you there. So talking about vehicles, the interviewer says, can you tell me about wheeled vehicles, armored vehicles, or reconnaissance vehicles? And Johan says Super Earth is conducting various experiments to improve the mobility of Helldivers. Shams says, however, it is too dangerous to send expensive equipment to the battlefield. Vehicles are too expensive. Super Earth is sensitive to the economics of the battlefield and doubts the driving skills of the Helldivers. Of course, it would be fun to put 4 Helldivers in one vehicle and run around shooting guns. I mean, that's a cool... There's been a leak. There is a weapon. Well, not a weapon. There's like an armored personnel carrier. You can all jump in it and then shoot out the different ports as somebody drives it around. Yeah, anyway. Johan then says, I'm not sure if Helldivers are old enough to drive. Sham says they're close to 18, but not yet. Come to think of it, my Helldiver couldn't save more than 50,000 credits. I guess the cars are quite expensive. And Sham says the car will probably cost around 55,000 credits. And Johan says, on a more serious note, vehicle updates are in the plans. It will be added soon, but I don't think I can go into more detail than that. And yeah, look, there was a tank in Helldivers, right? Give us the tank. It would be very democratic, I'm sure. There's loads of vehicles, right? There's a scout buggy. There was obviously the armored personnel carrier thing. So these are things that are in the game files, and you can get them out the files. You can even host local sessions of the game and play them if you want. So they're there, but it's just a case of them packaging them up and then delivering them to us. So what about these Chaos Divers then? So Sham says this, the updates that many people are hoping for are probably already on our roadmap. It's just not happening right now. We've been looking at the community every day since our fiasco, and we're considering anything that's not too outrageous. I think a lot of people at the time were frustrated with us not communicating, so they turned into Chaos Divers. Johan says, yeah, we're thinking about how to incorporate these Chaos Divers into the game right now. Sham says, we didn't respond quickly about them, but things will be different in the future. The negative reviews of the game were heartbreaking at the time, but looking back now, I think it was a blessing that gamers spoke out and acted, and that the negative reactions became the medicine that made us who we are today. It's much better to have negative reactions than to not say anything when the game is going in a negative direction. Now, I think we took the right path. I'm grateful that gamers are satisfied. Yeah, the only thing I'd say with this is this thing of like, okay, we want to... How can we incorporate... I don't know, Chaos Divers, that's what Johan says, like acknowledge them in the, I guess, in-game, in the lore of the game, whatever. You can kind of say they maybe have with the recent war bond, especially with the icon. But, you know, what about the review bombing situation? Where's the cape for that? You know, there's a lot of things they've said in the past they would bring into the game that they never have. And this is a problem. Like, I don't really like it when they go out and start saying things like this. Like, oh, yeah, we're thinking about doing this and doing that. And then it's actually months and months away, or it never happens at all. And, of course, don't forget, guys, the PSN drama. There's still a ton of fallout from that, because there's a lot of countries that can't even play Helldivers now, which is... It's terrible. You know, and it needs to be resolved. And is it going to be resolved? Well, unfortunately, it looks like no. That's completely out of the window. So what about Korean Helldivers? Remember, this is Korean media, so they want to know what the hell is going on with the Korean Helldivers. And have you got any message for them? And Sham says, first of all, I'd like to say a big thank you and let you know that we see all the little posts from the community that you might not think we see. We see all the memes that spread in the Helldiver community in Korea, and sometimes you understand things that are a little culturally coloured and hard to understand. It may be a bit sensitive, but I know that the situation in Korea, divided into North and South, creates more explicit and fun memes about democracy. And Johan says, I think Korea is the country that deploys the most Helldivers among Asian countries. When the American Helldivers go to bed and the battlefield calms down, the Korean Helldivers go to the battlefield and continue the advance for democracy. I am always grateful and will always continue to provide great updates that make us forget all the disappointing things we have shown so far. Just one last thing to add. There are 3 big ones coming soon. 3? Right, 3. I can't tell you right now, but 3. Okay, so what are these 3 big things coming to the game? Well, you can deploy the memes and go, well, Arrowhead's big 3 could just be not what we expect. Like, what's my big 3? Right, it's the Illuminate, it's new ridiculous weapons and new amazing stratagems, right? That's my big 3. But Arrowhead's big 3 might be, we're going to fix the DSS. We've got a new biome. And we've got a new way for you to spend resources and turn them into samples or something, which actually would be quite good now I think about it. But, you know, I think we've got to be a bit like, yeah, 3 major updates. Are they going to be insane? Are they just going to be, well, yeah, we fixed some bugs and you've got a new planet you can go to now and goodbye. Yeah, maybe. I don't know. All right, guys, let me know what you think about all of this in the comments below. Like I said, it's been a pretty long video, but I do enjoy this kind of thing. I really like seeing extended interviews that developers conduct because it gets you sort of into their mindset and into their way of thinking. It'd be really cool to actually talk to these devs. I'm not even sure that's possible in this day and age. But anyway, it is cool when these things pop up, and it's cool when we get to look at them because, like I said, it gets us behind the curtain. We get to see what the devs are thinking, how they got to where they are, and it's just cool stuff. I like it. We're like invested in these games because they are live service ongoing games, and yeah, so we are invested in what's happening with them. Also, as well, the nominations for Game of the Year are out, or the Game Award nominations. Helldivers isn't in the Game of the Year category, and I don't think this comes as a surprise to anyone, really. I think, like, it could have been if it didn't have all the issues it had, but I think it needed to have the issues it had to turn into the game it is right now. So I don't think it ever really could have been in question for or consideration for Game of the Year. But it is in for other categories, like I think best ongoing game, best multiplayer game, and stuff like that. So it does have a chance because it is still very unique, and right now in its current form, it is very good. All right, guys, thanks for watching the video. I've been Stylosa. You can follow me on everything which is @Stylosa, and yeah, I'll catch you lovely lot on the next one. See you soon.